and welcome to the Tough Girl podcast, which is all about motivating and inspiring you. My name is Sarah Williams and I'm the host of the Tough Girl podcast. Now, if you're a regular listener of the podcast, I know you'll probably know far too much about me and don't really need to know anymore. But if you are new to the podcast and this is the first time listening, I just thought I'd briefly tell you just a little bit more about me and my background. So I spent 8 years working down in London before deciding I'd had enough of my job, and I ended up quitting in March 2013. I then spent the next 18 months traveling around the world, visiting Africa to go and climb Kilimanjaro. I ended up writing a book about it. I spent time in Australia. I did a ski season and worked in Switzerland for 6 months. Also wrote another book about that, your chalet hosting, your step-by-step guide. I then backpacked around South America for about 5 months, flying into Lima in Peru, visiting Machu Picchu, Easter Island, heading down to the volcano Vilacari to go and climb it, cycling down Death Road, paragliding in Rio, visiting Iguazu Falls, and just having an absolute amazing time. Most recently this year, I actually ran an ultra race called the Marathon des Sables, so 6 marathons in 6 days across the Sahara Desert. If you want to hear more about my journey of getting to the start line, I've actually done my own podcast episode where I have a friend interview me and ask me questions about my experience. So just quickly, just to let you know what we've got coming up, we're going to be speaking to Lowri Morgan, who is this awesome Welsh ultra runner who has just done some incredible experiences. She's going to talk to us about being one of the very few people who actually head down to visit the Titanic. So she's been down to the bottom of the ocean to see the Titanic, which is absolutely amazing. She also talks about training for some of the ultra endurance races that she's done, such as in the jungle in the Arctic, and also how life has changed for her after she had her baby son, who also makes a brief appearance in the podcast as well. So we'll be able to hear him a little bit later on. At the very end of the podcast, I then do a brief update and tell you a little bit more about what's happening with the Tough Girl Tribe, which you'll have to listen to find out what that is. And there's also this time a little bit of extra bonus footage as well, bonus audio, because at the very end, we just had a quick chat about another sailing challenge that Lowri did where they actually ended up winning the race. There's a little bit of extra stuff coming at the very, very end of the podcast. Anyway, let's get on with the interview. Enjoy. Hi, Lowri. How are you?
Hi, Sarah. Great to be on this podcast. Looking forward to speaking to you.
Oh, fantastic. So, Lowri, can you tell everyone, where are you based at the moment?
Well, I'm based in Cardiff, but I'm from the Gower originally. That's where I was brought up, but moved up to Cardiff about 5 years ago now. And that's where I've been, yeah.
I was going to say, looking through your website, I've just been blown away by some of the different challenges that you have put yourself through. It's absolutely incredible. And I can't wait to talk about all of that in more detail. But for those who maybe don't know who you are, how would you introduce yourself?
Oh, goodness. Do you know what? I really don't know anymore because my path has changed so many times. I work in television, so I'm a TV presenter. I also produce programs. I have worked on radio as a sports journalist. I'm a runner. I'm an adventurer. I don't know. I think I tend to say an adventurer and broadcaster. I think that tends to cover what I do, hopefully.
Absolutely. And you've done some incredible stuff, haven't you, throughout the years?
Yeah, I've been really lucky, to be honest with you. I've been very lucky to have travelled the world as a backpacker and with my work and by racing in some of the world's toughest endurance races. And I feel very privileged, to be honest with you, to have had that experience and seen the world through different ways, basically.
I always want to go back to your childhood and growing up, where you brought up in, I'm going to make a big assumption here and assume you were brought up in Wales. And, just tell everyone a little bit more about what it was like growing up for you.
Well, I was brought up in the Gower, basically, for me, a playground for adventure. As a family, we would travel in our caravan around Europe, but then we'd always finish off the summer holidays just going 5-10 minutes down the road from our house down to the beaches of the Gower, and that's where we would just spend our last few days of holiday just surfing, sailing, windsurfing, riding horses, just going on adventures, running along the dunes and everything. And I think adventures kind of evolved throughout my life, basically. And I think that's how I've ended up going on these amazing adventures. It's in my blood, basically. It's who I am. And I also think my determination started very early on. Well, that's what my parents say anyway. I remember I was 8 years old and I was singing in the Eisteddfod, which is a Welsh music festival, Welsh arts festival now. I was spotted for my singing talent at the age of about 8 years old. And after a few hard months of practice, I won the National Eisteddfod. And I think that determination epitomized my attitude towards life, really. You know, after that, I just could feel that I had that kind of maybe stubbornness, maybe to kind of try and do something that I didn't think I could do and try to succeed in it.
Did you know then from quite a young age that actually you wanted to travel and have adventures or you wanted to become a TV presenter or make movies? How did it sort of evolve? What was the process that you went through?
Oh, goodness. Well, music has always been an important role in my life. When I was growing up until my mid-20s, I always wanted to become a classical singer. That's what I always dreamt of becoming, what I trained to do. On the other hand, adventure sport was always a passion of mine, an integral part of my life, but it was singing that I saw myself doing professionally. But like I said earlier, life chose a completely different path for me. And even though I often wonder what life would have been like as a singer, you know, I don't regret a single thing because now people call me an adventurer, a broadcaster, and I've had this wonderful experience, loads of experiences that have really, I think, they've changed my life, really, opened my eyes to different ways of living, and it's put me here basically into the world of ultra running and adventure. And yeah, I feel very honoured to have and privileged to have experienced everything. But I went into television when I was about 24 years old. I basically didn't know what I wanted to do after university. I knew I wanted to sing, but I just wanted to take a year out of it. And so I backpacked around the world, tried different jobs. I do have high expectations of myself, which is a blessing, sometimes a curse. When I realized that my singing voice wouldn't take me to the top of my chosen career, you know, I changed my path. I felt that I did have the attributes to being a TV presenter. And despite working and starting from right to the bottom of the ladder and making teas and sandwiches for a TV company, I eventually got a job as a children's TV presenter, and I applied for it full of enthusiasm and determination. And luckily I got the job, and that was about 16, 17 years ago now. I've been very lucky to have followed world championships as a sport journalist. I've dived with sharks, jumped out of planes. I was very, very fortunate back in 2003 now to have been only one of 18 in the world to have dived down to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean to see Titanic. And people always ask about Titanic, which is something that will always stay in my memory. It was an amazing adventure.
Let's just quickly talk about the Titanic, because just hearing you say that is just amazing. I mean, I pretty much can guarantee that everybody listening will have watched the movie with Leonardo and Kate. But the Titanic is obviously an incredibly iconic ship. It was actually built in Liverpool, I think. But how did that come about?
I used to do quite a lot of wreck diving, and I was asked if I could present a TV documentary on the Titanic. I just started to study the ship. I started to read about the people who travelled on her, the building of her, just the history behind her, the life of the beginning of the 20th century. And I just got really hooked. And it took us 2.5 hours to drop down to the bottom of the ocean in a submersible, the Mir 1, which you actually see on the film Titanic. And we then spent about 5 hours traveling around the ship, which lies in two parts, about half a mile separating them. And when people ask me about, you know, what's it like seeing her, I tell them she's still beautiful, absolutely amazing to see her lying there, very peaceful at the bottom of the ocean. She's enormous, but it is like going on a roller coaster of emotions. On one hand, you couldn't help but get excited at seeing the ship. You'd studied her for so long. To basically see her so close was just amazing. But on the other hand, we're constantly reminded by the personal belongings you saw, you know, the shoes, the leather shoes, the children's shoes you saw on the bottom of the ocean, and just suitcases, things that reminded you of the people who were looking for a new life in America. You just realize actually we're looking at a graveyard of 1,500 people. So yes, it was an amazing experience, very eerie at times, but also just a fascinating journey to go on.
I mean, you're absolutely right. It is, you know, obviously the excitement of actually seeing something that so few people in the world have seen, but then equally, yeah, I mean, it's such a tragedy that what happens in it is actually sort of a graveyard, even though it's sort of very sort of peaceful down there.
Exactly, and it was as if things were so clear at the bottom. The current had basically kept the floor very, very clean, so there were no, when you saw suitcases on the floor or bottles of champagne still standing up, and it was very clear there was no build-ups of sand around them, and it was just fascinating, really. Yeah. Something I'll never forget.
So I just want to take you back a little to when you were 18, because you had quite a serious injury and you were told that you'd never be able to run again. And I just wondering, if you could maybe share a little bit more about that experience, having that experience at such a young age, and what the impact of that was.
I used to run competitively at school. Used to do quite a lot of cross country and athletics. But when I was 18 years old, I shattered my knee and my ligaments and cartilage, etc., etc. I spent about a year in a cast, in a wheelchair, on crutches. And I was told that my running career had come to an end and I wouldn't be able to run properly again. And I remember leaving the hospital in a wheelchair, determined to prove not to the doctors that they were wrong, but to myself that this wasn't going to be true. 2 years after the operation, I sort of started back slowly. When I was on crutches, I was still doing a lot of training in the pool. I wasn't moving very far because I could move my knee for quite a long time. But I was just mentally, I was back training. And 2 years after the operation, I represented Wales at rugby, ran my first out of, I don't know, about 9 official marathons now, and went on to complete 2 Ironman triathlon races. And I think that was a huge turning point in my life, really. I think it's given me that kind of determination to do things that I thought I couldn't do. I think sometimes good things come out of bad things, and that certainly was the case in that situation anyway.
Oh, definitely. And do you know what I really liked what you said there? Mentally, you were back training, even though you couldn't go very quickly. I mean, had that mental strength, where do you think that came from?
I don't know. I think it's something that I've had ever since I was very young. I spent so much of my time on my own, training on mountains and on coastal paths, etc. And I do a lot of thinking. And I remember I came back from a very long run once, and I've been thinking about this. And I was thinking, where do I get it from? Why am I like the person I am? And my parents said I was like this when I was a child. You know, I was always looking for adventure. I was always pushing boundaries and looking for new boundaries, basically. They'd be looking around for me, and I'd be on climbing this dune, which at the time for a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old was absolutely ginormous. But I think it's in me. But then these little experiences that they form my personality today. For example, the breaking of my knee and other things that have happened have really added to that character and made me even more determined. Sometimes I ask, is it genetic or is it nature or nurture? I think it's a bit of both, really.
Yeah. You are an incredible ultra runner, and you've done some amazing feat. And as well as having, but as well as having that physical fitness, it is that strength of mind. Looking back at
definitely.
Yeah, I mean, looking back at some of the challenges that you've done, whether the Ring of Fire, the Jungle Ultramarathon, the Arctic Ultramarathon, which race or challenge has really tested you mentally, like pushed you to that breaking point?
Oh, goodness, that's a good question. I would say, I think the Amazon was the first proper ultra multi-day stage race I had ever done. And that was the one where really pushed me, and I was walking into the unknown, really, not knowing what was coming to me. In hindsight, I realized we shouldn't be afraid of the unknown. Things like this only make us stronger. For example, on the eve of the Amazon race, a few of us competitors were talking about our expectations. You know, many told of their excitement, how they were going to cross the line. I, on the other hand, said, I'd be happy with surviving the first 2 days. And I was promptly told, you need more confidence, you need to believe in yourself. And despite my insecurities, I'm sure we all have insecurities, but I certainly do. I did believe in myself. I also had a quiet confidence, but out there in the Amazon jungle, you have to have respect for Mother Nature. She's far greater than us. You're not even the fastest or the strongest can never beat her. I would spend up to 20 hours on my own in the jungle, horrendous conditions. It was about nearly 40-degree heat and 90% humidity. And it was especially then that I asked myself, how did I get myself to be here? And I do think, like I mentioned earlier, my upbringing and schooling had a big part to play. I was taught that hard work, hard preparation does pay off. You don't have to necessarily be the fastest or the strongest, nor the most experienced runner on the start line. But I knew that if I could be the best prepared person on the start line, then I had a chance. Because when I was very young, I was about 14, and I failed in some of my school exams, and I wasn't the brightest, nor the cleverest, nor even the fastest runner in school. And then, I was promptly told by my family about the tortoise. The tortoise does eventually get there in the end. If I was willing to work hard, persevere, if I was determined enough, I could reach my potential. And that's been my motto during these ultra races. Just keep plodding. The plodders always get there in the end. When I can't sprint, I plod, but I just try not to quit. Putting one foot in front of another is very hard to do physically and mentally when you're exhausted. But it is possible. When I was in the jungle, I was bitten quite badly by hornets, by a swarm of hornets. And I thought, oh, goodness, I'm not going to make it out of the jungle. And I thought, well, I'll make it to the next checkpoint and then I'll give up. That's what I'll do. And I thought, well, I'm not going to even get to that checkpoint. And then I remembered this quotation. It was, glory is not by never falling, but in the way we rise when we do fall. And I realized then it was like a flash bulb moment where I thought, well, if I put one foot in front of another, it means that I'm 1 foot closer to the finishing line. And that's what I did. I just kept plodding on. And all of a sudden, this surge of energy came from nowhere, deep within the soul somewhere. And I just found this strength and surge of energy. And this smile came onto my face. And the pain in my toes, I'd lost my toenails, the pain had disappeared. I just felt this strength, and I just ran to the finish line with a huge smile on my face, in just feeling great, actually. And I just think the mind is an amazing thing. That's where I think there was like a switch inside me that just went, my body gave up and my mind took over. And it was quite a spiritual moment for me. It was absolutely amazing what the mind did at that moment. And I think that the Amazon race will stand in my memory for forever because of that kind of that moment and what I learned about human nature and the human mind, what we can do. I think the Arctic one was definitely the hardest, but it was very humbling. It stripped my soul bare, but it also rebuilt it. So those are the two races I think that have really defined me in a way, really opened my eyes, and I'm very honoured to have raced them basically and finished as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting what you said, because I think some women especially feel as though that they need to have this natural ability, and they need to be really good at something before they can do it, before they can try it, before they can give it a go. Whereas actually, what you've just said is, as long as if you work hard and you prepare yourself, you can be the best prepared, definitely, when you go out there. And actually, it is about that plodding. It's not sprinting all the way through. It's about putting one step in front of the other. So in terms of preparation, I mean, preparing for an ultra endurance race is incredibly challenging. But when you're going into the jungle, or you're going into the Arctic, or to these extreme conditions, it takes it to a whole new level. I mean, with the jungle, you said 90% humidity. I've never sort of experienced that. I've done the 40 degrees, and I absolutely love that. I love the heat. But how did you get yourself physically prepared for that jungle ultra marathon?
Going back to the idea that women can't do something, I think it is in us. We can do it. When I go out racing, I'm not there to compete against other women. I'm there to compete against myself, but also, regardless of gender, of all athletes there on the start line, especially in the world of ultra running. I try to compete on the same level as men, women, regardless of age, etc. But training wise, I remember, I had 18 months to prepare for the Amazon. I remember phoning my boss up early on in training in tears as I explained to him that I was in just too much pain to make it to work. I just could not get my legs out of bed. It was so heavy. I had run 40 miles that week. And I remember the fear then of thinking, how on earth am I going to run 140 miles in a week in the Amazon jungle? However, after those 18 months of training, I'd increased my weekly mileage to 100 miles a week. Those miles included me carrying 15 kilograms of sugar bags in my rucksack. It was just by increasing the mileage every week and just working hard, For the Amazon, that was just a different level again. Only 5 people in the world had ever finished the race, so I'd have to push myself to the limit again. It wasn't a competitive race for me, but a personal challenge. I wasn't looking to break any records, compete against others. I just wanted to push my physical and emotional limits to see how far I could go. And like I said, I knew I wouldn't be the fastest, strongest, or most experienced, but I knew I could be the best prepared. By the time I went to the Arctic, I was training about 30 hours a week, running 150 miles a week. In 12 months, I ran about 4,000 miles. I trained with the Special Forces in Sweden just to get used to my systems. I ran in industrial-sized freezers, had lots of funny stairs there. I'd run up Snowdon to the top, and then run down, touch the bonnet of the car, run back up for the second time, run back down. Then I would really tease myself by jumping into the car and eating a sandwich, and then dragging myself up for the third time consecutively. That was just for mental training, really, just to tease myself by sitting in that car. I remember sitting in that car thinking, do you know what, I could easily, and it was pouring down with rain, I could easily just turn the ignition on now and just drive off, but I didn't. And then another training session I did was a 50-mile race around the Brecon Beacons. And then as I crossed the finish line and everybody was having their hot coffees and chocolates and whatever, I just decided to run back to Gowerton, where I lived at the time, which was 60 miles away. So 110 miles in about 21 hours. So it was all about the preparation. They say nobody plans to fail, they just fail to plan. So I really followed that motto very carefully, really.
I love that. That's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I just come back from a weekend walking up Snowdon, and we took the Llanberis path, and we saw a few people running up it. And I say it's only sort of 9 miles, but the thought of going up, going to the top, heading back down, doing it again, sitting in the car, getting nice and warm and cozy, and then having to do it for a third time. Wow, I think that does take real mental strength. So physically, I mean, you said there, like the sheer number of miles, building it up. So you started with that 40 miles in a week, and then it's increased to 100 miles a week with the weighted backpack, 15 kilograms. You're obviously putting in thousands and thousands of miles over the months and the years. How has your body coped with that? I mean, because one of the things that I massively struggled with when I was doing huge amounts of mileage was just the sort of the exhaustion that I was feeling. And I ran myself into the ground because I didn't get the balance right between training and recovery. So how did you manage that balance? How did you get that right?
You're completely right, Sarah. It is about getting that balance. I think when I started off, maybe I didn't quite get the balance right, panicking that I wasn't doing enough training and maybe overtraining sometimes. I've been very, very blessed. I haven't had any injuries, but I have a genetic heart condition, which may have been responsible for my grandmother's early death of a heart attack when she was only 36 years old. I've been told that I might be needing a pacemaker when I'm older. And obviously, I was very shocked to hear this because, I was extremely fit. But it has made me, and it's forced me to listen to my body. I am extremely careful. I make sure that I try to run on soft ground as much as I can. I listen to my body. When I need a rest, I just take a rest now. Before, maybe I wasn't as strict, but now it's all about balance. And I think that's good, not just for the body, but for the mind as well. And I work quite a bit with a sports psychologist, especially when I go into these big races. And like they say, you can't, if your body is tired, just listen to your body. Sometimes take a rest and just do a double session the following day or something. But you have to be so regimented with training, especially now I'm a mother. I had my son just over a year ago, and it's all about fitting running in around him now. I try to go running for a few hours before he gets up in the morning, and then in the afternoon I'll just go around with him in the pram, pushing the pram, and the dog wrapped around the dog lead wrapped around my waist. A lot of people tend to look at me thinking, what on earth is she doing? But, I enjoy it. I really enjoy it. And that's the way I'm fitting in training. But it is difficult to get the balance right, isn't it? And also the fear that you're not doing enough if you've got a big race coming in. But you've just got to have faith in yourself and have patience as well. That's one thing that I've learned. I think if you're running a 5K or a 500K, it's all about having patience and having faith in your body that you will get there in the end. Sometimes you get panicky that the legs aren't moving fast enough or the finishing line isn't getting to you fast enough, and you just got to let it go and just enjoy it. Sometimes I go running without a watch, and I just go with the flow and just try to remind myself, why do I run? Why do I do it? Because we have tough days. I raced on Saturday. It was a 75 mile and I gave up at 44, and I've never given up before in a race, but I've got a bigger challenge coming up in 2 weeks' time, which is the bigger picture for me, really. I had to think about that. And also I had a cold, and I had to kind of think to myself, well, what's most important? Is it crossing the finish line or thinking about the challenge ahead and my health? And I just gave up, and I have no regrets about doing that. Even the best sportsmen and entrepreneurs in the world have all failed on their way to success somehow. And I think sometimes failure can make success feel even sweeter. So I've got to remind myself that it's all about balance, really.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the things I'd be interested in, I mean, I'm single. I don't have a husband. I don't have children. And so I can be incredibly selfish. So if I want to go out for these extreme training runs, these incredible long walks, I can just do that. And I've got that flexibility and that freedom. But obviously life has evolved, and you've got your son now. And how did you make that transition to still being able to still wanting to be able to do all of the training that you do and that you love and that you enjoy? How do you merge that with family life now?
It is tough because I met I was running ultras before I met my husband. So I understand totally what you mean by, you have the time, you're in control of your life, and you can be selfish. Now that I have a husband and a young son, yes, it's all about fitting in training around family life, and it is finding the balance, and it is having a great understanding with my husband, and him being very patient with me as well, and knowing that this is what makes me tick, really. So it is about getting up early in the morning, trying to get the mileage in before he gets up. And then I've got family time then. And also bringing him into my life, bringing William into my life, taking him on runs with me. I've been very lucky on the challenges that I've already been, that I've got the family support, that he comes to the races. And hopefully that instead of me changing my life to fit around him, he's become a part of my life as well. And I hope it'll work. It's very early days, but and he's very young at the moment, but hopefully it'll work out anyway. But it is tough, but it's what I love, and I've got to remind myself about that.
Do you think it's changed your outlook with regards to sort of fear? And what I mean by that is, I think when you don't necessarily have people relying on you, and actually you can just go out and do these challenges and almost be completely fearless. But then having children, does that change how you view and evaluate risk in terms of selecting what races that you would do, or what challenges or adventures that you would go on?
At the moment, I don't want to go away on long expeditions like I used to be able to do, because I don't want to be away from Gwilym for that long. So at the moment, I'm trying to choose races, expeditions that don't take me away from home for that long. When I was pregnant and people found out that I was pregnant, I had a lot of remarks that saying, life's going to change, you won't be able to run as much, and you won't be able to do what you did before. And to be honest with you, the opposite has happened. I feel more determined to do things now. I feel that the passion is even stronger now with Gwilym, because I want to bring him up knowing that if Mam can do it, then I can do it. I wasn't the best, but I just gave it a go. I gave it my best, and I feel that he needs a role model to show him that. It's hard work, it's hard preparation that makes you succeed in whatever you choose to do. With regards to doing things, being fearless, yes, it has changed. But it's also changed with me becoming a bit older. I think I used to ski quite a bit, still do, but I used to ski these very tough mountains. I don't think I would do it as much as I used to do it before. I wouldn't be putting myself in as much risk as I did with some of the sports I used to do. I've always taken a calculated risks in all I've done before. So, life has changed, but for the better, especially in the world of adventure anyway with Gwilym.
Yeah.
Oh, he's here now, sitting by me now.
Oh, he's waking up, little cutie. Right.
He's okay. He just needs attention. That's all, isn't it?
Just attention. Are you okay to answer a few more questions?
Yes, of course. Yes, no problem.
So you've been to the Amazon, you've been in the jungle, but you've also done the Arctic. So you've had these massive extremes in weather conditions. I personally hate the cold and I hate the wet, and so the thought of doing the Arctic would be absolutely horrendous for me. But the jungle, I was thinking, more about those 40 degrees. I could sense I could do that because of the heat. So which one do you enjoy more? Are you more with the cold? Are you more with the heat, or does it not really bother you?
Oh, definitely the heat. Definitely, I'm with you on that. Even though I thoroughly enjoyed my time out in the Arctic, and I think it was the best challenge I've ever had to face. I think I'd have to say the heat. The cold, it was minus 72 degrees Celsius in the wind, and you just stopped, and the cold would just bite away at your bones, as I would try to describe it. It was just hard. It was really hard. And, I would cry basically in pain, and the tears would just freeze, and I realized there's no point crying anymore. having said that, I was happy on the ice roads. I had to convince myself that I was. I couldn't let the beautiful landscape affect this pain in my body. I couldn't deny the shooting agony in the bottom half of my body. But I was happy there. I was extremely happy. I would love to go back there again. I would love to do the Antarctica. I would love to see the Arctic again. Just an amazing, very peaceful and the tranquility. I'll never forget that.
When you talk about like the tranquility of the race, and because it is such an extreme race. This is the notoriously tough 6633 Ultra in the Arctic, and I mean, when you did it, I believe that you were the only person to finish that race.
Yes, yes, I was. Apparently, there were bets early on in the race, or the night before the race started, actually, on who would be the favourite to pull out. And you can imagine who was the favourite to pull out. But yeah, I was the only one to have finished it, the sixth person in the world to have finished it. And after about 180 miles, there were two of us left in the race. But he gave up around mile 250. I spent the last few days on my own. And I remember then thinking, oh, I could give up now because I'm the last man standing. I think it was hallucinations of some sort, but I sort of saw myself sitting back on the sofa telling my friends and family, oh, I kind of won this race because I was the last man standing. And I could feel the disappointment even then. And then I kind of snapped back into reality and realized that the pain of failure would last far greater and far longer than the pain I was going through at the time. I'd basically shattered my metatarsals. So I was in a lot of pain, but I just kept going, and I just felt, I've just got to keep going. And the last 100 miler was like my sprint home. I knew I was going to make it to the end. Very odd, because I think that was my attitude was so positive towards the end because of the training I'd done. That 110 mile I'd done earlier in the year. Because I'd done that, I knew I've been here before mentally. I've been down to the bottom before mentally, and I know I can get back up. And I just kept going, kept plodding. And I remember phoning home saying, don't worry about me, I'm coming home, I'm on my sprint home. And that was on mile 100, which is quite crazy to think about. But yeah, it just makes me smile just thinking about it now.
But it's that mental attitude. I remember Emma Timmis and another girl I've interviewed who's run across Africa twice. She wrote a blog post about how you've got to change your mindset when you're running. Because I used to think when I first started out that running 10 miles was a long distance in my mind. And I realized I needed to make that shift, whereas actually 10 miles was the short, quick, easy runs. And actually it was the 20, 25 mile runs that were the long runs. And it's quite amazing when you can shift your mindset. And that's obviously what you did. It's like, oh, I'm on my sprint home now with 110 miles to go.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it? But it's all relative, Yeah. For somebody who's running 5K, friends ask me, how do you do it? How do you do it? Well, it's just you cut races into short pieces, basically. So for a 5K, it would be a K at a time. For a marathon, for me, it's 2 10-milers with a 10K to finish off. With a 350 mile race, it was just, I cut them down to 50 mile races. So it's all about cutting down, and then the mind just gets used to it slowly and slowly. It's amazing, isn't it, how the mind works? Yeah. But it is definitely mental. I think ultra running is, I would say, 70% mind and 30% physical. I think sometimes, especially with these ultra distances, just fascinating. You go to places in your head where I don't think that we normally go to. You learn so much about yourself.
So there are some phenomenal challenges out there, and you've obviously done loads of them. What else is left that you want to do? What's ticking away? What's on your bucket list that you think, I've got to do that?
There's so many amazing ultra races out there that I'd love to do. Basically, I'm getting back into racing now. Before having Gwilym, I took a few years off to have Gwilym. And then, of course, now that I have him, I was very lucky that I went back running about 3 weeks after having him. So I've just had to build up again after a few years out of running. So like I said, the passion is even stronger now. I really want to get back into racing. So many races in America. I just want to see the world. I want to go to Africa, Australia, Asia. There's so many races that I'd like to do. Like I said, I'd like to go to Antarctica as well. Where do you stop? That's the thing. As long as my knees can carry me, then I'll keep doing things. I might get slower with old age, but it's about just keeping going. Doesn't matter about the speed. It's about the adventure, the journey. That's how I see it. So there's one challenge I'd like to do, which is doing ultras on the 7 continents. I'd like to do that. In 2 weeks' time, I'll be running from North Wales down to South Wales in 3 days via the Peaks. So that's coming up shortly. And it's just one challenge at a time at the moment. But the world is a very big place. So, let's see.
Let's see. Absolutely. Well, I can hear, is it Gwilym?
Gwilym, yeah.
Gwilym,
it's Welsh
Gwilym.
for William. Yeah, Gwilym.
Gwilym. Well, I can hear Gwilym waking up. So just a final few questions. What are your final words of advice for our listeners out there who may be interested in doing something, getting them outside their comfort zone?
I've learned that the only hard thing I've ever had to do is face my fear, having the guts to face my fear. And I've learned that adventure is only a state of our minds. Over the years, I've learned that only with hard work, positive mental attitude, dedication, perseverance, determination, I've been able to achieve these success. And, despite the physical, mental and emotional pain and hardship of these races, they've been the best adventures and most humbling and awe-inspiring experiences of my life. So I try to tell people to embrace whatever life brings you, with all its joys, all its sorrows, because everything has something to offer you. And I encourage people to take risks, to think of life as a continuing series of experiments from which to learn more about living. So take risks, have the guts to face your fear, and never give up.
Oh, awesome words of advice, Lowri. Thank you so much. And Lowri, where can people go to find more information about you?
On my website, lowrimorgan.com, which I'm working on at the moment, but also my Twitter page, _Lowri Morgan, as LOWRI Morgan. Wow. So, they'll be able to catch up with my stories and my adventures on Twitter and Facebook.
Fantastic. If you've enjoyed listening to Lowri, send her a tweet and let her know what your next challenge is going to be. Lowri, thank you so much for coming on the Tough Girl podcast and sharing so much about your incredible life and the incredible feats that you've done. You are an inspirational role model to the women and men out there for doing what you do. So please may it continue. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's an absolute honor to be on your podcast. Absolute privilege to be alongside so amazing, inspirational ladies. Thank you very much.
So whenever I finish an interview with a guest, I always stay on at the end just to have a quick chat with them all. And also I end up getting their address because I always send them a little thank you card to thank them really for their time, for giving up their time and coming on the podcast. And normally you end up having these really sort of off the record conversations about random topics. And I always ask for recommendations as well. Can they recommend any other awesome women to get on the podcast? And at this point, we were having a really good chat. And Lowri just mentioned that she'd been part of this 3 Peaks Yacht Race. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to go in and ask more questions about it, which was a real shame. But there's about a couple of minutes clip that just tells you a little bit more about her experience of the race, and I'll play that for you now.
We did the 3 Peaks Yacht Race with Ellen Harv recently. And basically, we were 5 ladies doing the 3 Peaks Yacht Race. And it was amazing, the attitude towards us as kind of 5 ladies. The press releases were hilarious because they would list all the teams, and then at the end they'd be like, it's really nice to see 5 girls getting together to compete. Anyway, as the days were going by, we were leading, and basically our kind of our position kind of moved up the press releases slowly, and we won. And, I think what you're doing is amazing, because it's so important for women to kind of know that they can compete against its level playing field in many races. And it's all about mind, it's all about attitude. And it's so important because, some people are still very old-fashioned in their attitude towards us, in these. I know that you've done ultra races, and women can compete side by side alongside with men, and brilliant. What I'm saying is amazing what you're doing, inspiring so many women, because I think women tend to think, if I can't do 5K, there's no point doing it or something like that. That the attitudes, we need to encourage the women to get out, to get fit. You don't have to do be a netball player or a hockey player you can just go out running with your mates, or just pushing a pram with your baby and whatever, just that you go out and go on an adventure, isn't it? With the press releases and people ask us, are you going to compete? And we were like, yeah, we're good. We're top in our chosen sport. Why shouldn't we be competitive? It's like, women, it doesn't mean that we're not going to be competitive and we're just going out for a jolly,
Yeah.
But and then we won.
So what I really love about that story is the fact that they ended up winning the whole race. So I think that's absolutely amazing. I will be reaching out to some of the other women who were part of the crew to get their story and to find out more about the Three Peaks Yacht Race, because it sounds absolutely awesome. So yeah, I just wanted to include that bit just because I really liked what Lowri was saying about don't underestimate women. Don't feel as though just because you're a woman that you can't do stuff. You obviously can. I found Lowri so inspirational, especially with what she was talking about, all her words of wisdom around failure and fear and risk and preparation. Every single person can prepare themselves the best that they can do. That has nothing to do with natural talent or ability, but preparation every single person can do. I honestly feel as though so much has been happening over the past couple of weeks, and it's just been a really sort of crazy month. So we had a fantastic Tough Girl. We had 2 trips actually to Snowdonia. So the first one was on the 6th of August. Beautiful weather, up the Llanberis path, stunning views, absolutely amazing. I created a short YouTube video of that and put that on the YouTube channel, so go and check that out. Then we went back again on the 20th of August, a completely different picture. It was insane. The weather was so windy, it was thundery, it was rainy, it was just absolutely no way that we could walk up Snowdon. So what was really good is the amazing Ellen Percy was there, and Ellen designed this fabulous walk. So we headed out, we kept down to the low hills. We were just out for a couple of hours walking in the rain. It cleared up occasionally, and it was just beautiful getting back to nature. There was an amazing crowd of the Tough Girl tribe there, which was fantastic. I was quite shocked actually. We stayed at, some of the girls stayed at a mountaineering hut the night before. And when we arrived, I thought, okay, so there's going to be about 8 of us. That's pretty awesome. That was the same number that we had last time. And I walked into another room and there's like another five girls sat there. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So there's about 13 of us in total, which was really, really brilliant. So thank you to everybody who made that journey, because we had people traveling from London, from Cornwall, from Birmingham. So absolutely awesome. I know the weather wasn't ideal, but everybody just made the best of it. In more exciting news, so I started the Tough Girl podcast on the 4th of August, 2015, which seems absolutely ages ago now, and I started with 4 episodes, and I've been putting out a weekly episode every Tuesday, so Tough Girl Tuesday, and last Christmas I did double, so it was every Tuesday and every Thursday. We're now up to 65 episodes, which is fantastic, and today we actually reached 100,000 downloads, which is amazing, and this is a goal I set myself at the beginning of the year, and I gave myself a year to achieve it, and I honestly had no idea how long it would take. I didn't know if people would like the message that I'm putting out there, if people would be interested in these stories. And I think actually this has proved that there is this interest around women, the female explorers, the female adventurers, the female athletes, the women out there, everyday women, Olympians who are going out there and achieving their dreams, and in the process motivating, inspiring a whole generation of women and girls to go after their dreams, to face their fears, and to live the lives that they really, really want to live. So I am absolutely ecstatic. But actually, I just want to say a massive thank you to you, because you are the reason that I'm here. You are the reason that I'm putting out these podcast episodes. I want to motivate and inspire you. And by getting to share these inspirational stories, I really hope that I'm doing that. So 100,000 downloads, absolutely blown away. So thank you to everybody who's subscribed. Thank you to everybody who's written a review. Thank you to everybody who's liked the Facebook page. Thank you to everybody who's told a friend about it, who's told a work colleague about it, who's just helped to spread the message of the Tough Girl podcast, which is all about motivation and inspiration. So this week I am actually off running with Emma Timmis. So I've mentioned her before. Awesome girl. She's won the National Adventurer of the Year award in 2015. She's run across Africa twice. She's been traveling. She's been over in Australia and New Zealand. She's back in the UK, and we are heading up to Hadrian's Wall to go and run Hadrian's Wall. So 85 miles. I actually haven't done a huge amount of running. When I say a huge amount of running, I've done zero running really since the Marathon des Sables in April. So this is going to be a really interesting challenge. I'm not sure how much running we're going to be doing. It could end up being more like speed walking than full-on hardcore running. But we're going up to have a good time, to explore more of the countryside, and just to have loads of fun, really. We'll be sharing all of our journey on social media, so come along and follow us on Twitter. I'm at _tough_girl, and you will be able to also follow along on the Facebook page. I'll share all the links, and do go and check out the website www.toughgirlchallenges.com, where there are all of the links to all of the podcast episodes and the Tough Girl blog and the couple of books that I've written as well. So thank you so much again for all your support. Do hit that subscribe button, and I will be with you next Tuesday for another fantastic episode of the Tough Girl podcast.